a reset. I'm Donnie, and I bet you thought my hat was going to be on my head, but hats off in the house. Well, today is episode 8. It is April 11th, 2021. I am still Donnie, though I'm now missing my chin rug. In anticipation of warmer weather, which we've been having here the last few days, I thought maybe it might get a little itchy and a little hot, so I went ahead and shaved off what used to be somewhere between Tom Selleck in Quigley Down Under, Frank Zappa, or maybe even Colonel Sanders from Kentucky Fried Chicken. But anyway, I shaved it off because I thought maybe my face could get tan, and then if I shaved it off, I might have a white stripe down my chin. So anyway, that's that. Anyway, today, episode 8, who are you, who am I, and who are we? We the people have become weakened by ignorance of the causes which have made the present reality of, in times of war, the law is silent, the law of emergency has seemed to be perpetual. Legal fiction and government de jure, the present reality, has made our true government de jure suspended and inactive. We the people have become weakened by apathy that we have no right or responsibility to reset our republic. We need to build ourselves up. This episode, number 8, the number 8 denote a new beginning. Ours begins today. Right now, we need to build ourselves up for the strength to press our right and our responsibility to reset our republic. To build rather than to tear down. Here's another word, and this is a dictionary definition. Edify. It's a verb used with object. Edified, edifying, to instruct or benefit, especially morally or spiritually, to uplift. Religious paintings that edify the viewer. Dictionary.com. Interesting that this dictionary definition uses the words morality or spirituality, but we are now undertaking in the building of ourselves up, the edification, the strengthening of ourselves for our right and our responsibility to do this for ourselves and for each other. It is the exercising of our right and our responsibility to reset our republic. Let's look at the origin of this word, edify. The origin of edify, 1300 to 50, Middle English, edifian. I won't try to pronounce all these things. Get out your unabridged dictionary. Well, anyway, it also uses the word house and temple. Well, that's interesting. It uses the word build for a house or a temple. We see the connection. If I write in our responsibility to build based upon a moral or spiritual people for which our government is designed and no other, remember what John Adams said? Quote, our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate for the government of any other. John Adams. The word edifice, a noun, is associated or connected to the word edify. From the thesaurus, here's a sampling of other words or synonyms. Monument, erection, skyscraper. Did I say scaper? Skyscraper. Habitation, a place where we live. A building, a house. Construction, pile. Well, interesting word pile, and we'll look at it a little bit later, but to build something, we start from the bottom and work our way up. Many of us, due to how government has been operating since 1861, 1863, and continues to this day, we have been made to become weak, overwhelmed. We have no strength. We are ignorant, fearful, and apathetic. We need to build ourselves up. Many of us are at the bottom morally or spiritually and have no will to do what is right. We need to build ourselves up. So building us up, like any construction or building an edifice, we need to build from the bottom or the ground up. A great deal of this is a mindset. How we will answer this. How and who are you, who am I, and who are we, will determine how and what we build. A building and all buildings begin with some type of material. From ancient times to the present time, materials were brought to the location by people power, oxen, carts, cattle, horse-drawn wagons, by boat, by rail, by road, even by plane. Materials could be stone, wood, other materials, and for our purposes here, let us use bricks as an example of who you are, who am I, and who are we. Remember the word pile as a synonym for edifice, building? Think of these building materials being delivered to the construction site as a pile of materials, or in our case, a pile of bricks. In building ourselves up, we must look to what it is not to see what it is, or start with the less to understand the more. For you rock and rollers of the 60s and the 70s, there was a time when we had what was called the British invasion of rock bands coming out of mostly England. They also offered a new thing called a rock opera. The British band The Pretty Things entered the rock and roll history books in 1968 with what is generally acknowledged as the first rock opera, S.F. Sorrow. Tommy by The Who, also a British band, was released on May 23, 1969. Then the number 3. The rock opera was again a British band named Pink Floyd with The Wall on November 23, 1979. Before we get into some of the lyrics, let's look to another British band, Jethro Tull. On March 3, 1972, they released the album and the title song, Thick as a Brick. Thick as a brick has been used as a simile, a figure of speech, in Great Britain for a lack of intelligence or stupidity among our species from about the mid-19th century. The phrase is a variant of blockheads, woodenheads, maybe even dumbbells. These are not to be confused with what is meant here as you and I, being bricks, are together. We are the pile of bricks. Well, we are not useless pricks or bricks made to hide behind or made for others to use or just use, like some of the words from Pink Floyd's album in 1979, The Wall. All in all, just another brick in the wall. All in all, you're just another brick in the wall. All in all, it was just all bricks in the wall. All in all, you were all just bricks in the wall. Excerpts from The Wall, Pink Floyd, 1979. You and I are not just another brick in the wall. And did you catch the pronoun use? It never says we are all just bricks in the wall. It says you are all bricks in the wall. Well, we are not just bricks in the wall. Okay, maybe we were, but not anymore. Bricks were used in ancient Egypt. Bricks were made of clay and sand from the riverbed of the Nile. They were sun-dried, and to prevent the sun from making them brittle and easy to crack and break, straw was added to bind them together to make them dry faster in the sun, and straw greatly increased their strength and durability. Egyptian homes, tombs, granaries, and other buildings were made with these bricks. Some have portions still standing. Even though fire brick has been around since around 3500 BC, in South America, whole civilizations, including large pyramids, were made out of adobe bricks, millions of them. Adobe brick is made the same way, sun-dried with the straw or some other stubble to increase their strength. Some of these pyramids are most likely intact still and may even predate the bricks in ancient Egypt. But these are not the bricks we are made out of. growing up, my brother and our younger sister and I had the privilege and the advantage of living in the city, or a small town of about 15,000 people, but we also had grandparents that lived in the country. So we had kind of like the best of both worlds. And we had one set of grandparents that were highly educated. My one grandfather, my father's father, was a superintendent of schools and a counselor for colleges for most of his life. Our other set of grandparents were from large farming families, and they were not able to finish school. So they're not highly educated, if you want to call it that. But I looked at a 8th grade examination from rural Kansas in 1893, and I would bet you most lawyers and very highly educated people today could not even understand the questions, let alone answer them on a test that was required for you to pass into the 8th grade. Well, my mother's parents, like I said, are from larger farm families, and our grandfather, which we called Pawpaw. That's because my brother couldn't say Grandpa, so Pawpaw just kind of stuck. He also couldn't say Granny, so Nanny just stuck. But they got married and lived with family for about the first month of their marriage. And then my grandfather got a job at a brick company. And in this brick company, they had a little 2-bedroom, 1-story, no inside bathroom, no inside plumbing, tiny little home that was up by the office of the brickyard. And it was actually built for the foreman, or actually the night watchman. I believe his name was Jack. And he said, I don't want to live up there by the office. So he bought a trailer and he moved it down farther away from the office and all the dirt. There was nothing up there but a brick plant, dusty roads. To get there, you'd leave the city and you come up a long gravel road across a 1-lane bridge and then up the top of the hill, and there it was. So my grandmother and my grandfather moved into that little house when he got his job, and that was the first house that they ever lived in. And actually, it's the house that they lived in for most of their lives. Our mother was born there, and she stayed in that house, lived in that house until she graduated from college and married our father. Well, even though my grandfather was not a highly educated man, that doesn't mean he wasn't intelligent, because he was extremely intelligent. First and foremost, he was a farmer. That's what he wanted to be, was a farmer. So he, in addition to that, he knew how to lay brick. He worked for the brick company from 1937, and the original owner that started in 1896, I believe that was correct, he sold his shares to my grandfather, and my grandfather and another person came in, I believe his name was Conley, and they bought those two people owned that brick company. And that happened in about 1945. 1947, they changed the name to the Columbia Brick and Tile. And at some point, my grandfather was he was president of the Columbia Brick and Tile. And like I said, I got a little picture here I want to show you. And this is my grandfather. He's actually riding a cow. And that's the little house in the background, I believe. Unless I'm mistaken, but it sure looks like it's on the side of the house. One window would be one bedroom, or actually the living room, and the other one was the other bedroom. The other bedroom would be in the back, and then the kitchen, and that was pretty much it. So my grandfather's dream was to one day move out to his farm and build a house out there, and it was out in the middle of nowhere. And my grandmother said she's not moving out in the middle of nowhere. She said, I want that house moved down the hill. So they did. They moved the house on rollers, picked it up, and put it on a foundation The foundation had enough room underneath the house for my grandmother to park her car. There was a laundry area, which was a wringer washer at the time. There was a storage room, and also there was a bathroom. Finally, a bathroom with indoor plumbing and a tub. But there was no heat in the basement, so they plugged in an electric heater, and that took the chill off of it. Then stairs went upstairs towards one of the bedrooms. Later on, they put another little porch off and opened up the kitchen, and steep stairs going down that. There was a chicken coop in the back. My grandfather used to have chickens. He used to have pigs, and obviously at least they had one cow. That was the house when he was riding that cow. But anyway, he was president of the Columbia Brick and Tile for some period of time. And here's a picture of his business card, which I thought was kind of unique because it was they cut it in the shape of a brick, which I thought was really pretty unique. Well, so my grandfather raised a lot of sweet corn, places down around the flatlands, got the benefit of the river bed, all the fertile soil down there. He raised a lot of sweet corn and other produce. My grandmother and he were very generous people. They helped a lot of people, and he just loved to farm. But he also knew how to lay brick, and he laid a brick walk for my sister's playhouse. He built the playhouse there for her. We moved to another location later on in our lives, and he built another one for the new place. Well, this was their first and only home after they got married, and they stayed in that home until my grandfather retired at the age of 65. But this was a wonderful place to grow up. I enjoyed going out to see my grandparents, and my grandfather later sold his interest, and some other people came in and bought it. They kept the same name. My grandfather stayed on as the foreman until, like I said, the day he retired at the age of 65. I love the brickyard, and probably I walked a lot of the hundreds of acres that were around it, and it was a very interesting place. That big equipment would come and dig out all the shale or clay, and then they would mine it, strip mine it, load it onto trucks after about 24 hours because it needed to sit outside. Then these actually they were front loaders. Front loaders would dump it into a conveyor system that would take it up into the brick plant, and then from there it would go down and into the grinder, and the grinder would grind it up into a powder, and anything that was not fine enough went through a screen, and it would come back through and be ground up more. But that which was the powder went into a mixing container, and they added water, some other ores like iron oxide, to give it that rich red color, because that's basically what terracotta clay is. It's just a lot of iron oxide in it. So they could make recipes for all different kinds of bricks, different colors, different shapes, different sizes, different weights, different amount of holes that were through it. But once it was mixed, it went into an extruder, and the extruder would just push this through and make a uniform shape, and then something would cut it off about 9 foot long, and that was called a slug. Then the slug went down the conveyor, and there was a harp. That's what they called it, a harp. It had very tightly wound steels like you would find on a piano, and as it turned, it would cut into those and cut the individual bricks. And then 3 rods would come up and go all the way through it if you were doing that particular type of brick. Three rods would come through and put the holes in the center of the brick. Because believe it or not, that brick is actually a lot stronger with those holes in it. And it also is a place where the mortar can adhere to the, can bind to the brick, and it makes the brick a lot lighter. So the next thing is it goes down the conveyor belt. There would be men on either side, and they would manually take these bricks just out and place them on carts that were on like train tracks, and they would put a certain amount of them on the bottom so that a forklift could come in and pick them up. So the rest of them were all stacked uniform, and they'd do about 2 stacks per one of those carts, release the brakes, and then take it down the tracks and open it up and into the tunnel they would go. And I think the tunnels, I don't know how many they had, maybe 3 or 4. They had maybe 10 to a tunnel. And then over a period of 24 hours, they would slowly introduce moist air to dry out the bricks. And they had to have it just right because, believe it or not, those bricks could actually explode. So it took about 24 hours, and then the doors open, and then a little machine, like a little train, whatever you want to call it, the cars were hooked together. They'd pull them out, and then the next step was to have the forklifts come over and pick up those stacks, and the bottom would actually stick to it. And believe it or not, this whole thing was like almost like a mass. They didn't fall. They took them down to the kilns. The kilns were made out of brick on the outside and fire brick on the inside. They had round domes that were mortar or cement. And then there was a tower over here. That's where the furnaces were. And the guy that started it back in 1896, he found later on that there was coal on the property. So they used that to power up these furnaces and also for general power for the brickyard. And so then they would stack and fill the kilns. And then they were sealed up, and there was one little window at the top. And that little window up at the top was so that you could check and see, how the brick were doing when they were being fired. And at the top of that little window was this little clay piece, maybe about 3 inches wide, and had 3 cones sticking out of it. And this is what they looked like, something like this. And these cones, they're called, see if I can pronounce it correctly. Well, whatever. I can't pronounce it correctly. I just know what they did. And what they would do is each one of those cones would bend over or melt, if you will, when the kiln reached a certain temperature. And that's one of the ways in which they knew the brick was going to be done. On time, on schedule, had so much heat. And these furnaces, these kilns were firing up at about 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. So when you'd open up that little window, it was hot. And I know because many times my grandfather would lift me up so I could look in and I could see those cones sticking out. But back to this picture again, this is a cone that has not been fired, and this is after a period of time, and this one pretty much shows that it's done. This was overdone, so you don't want to get it that way. So my grandfather would write down notes, and he would leave them at the office, and that's how they knew that the bricks were getting close to being done, or they could change some temperatures or some length of time or whatever, and so the brick is going to be, exactly what they wanted. So when it was finally done, they would the tow motors or the forklifts, we also call them tow trucks, would come in and lift out all the piles of bricks. They would, as it was raised up in the air, they would knock off those other bricks on the bottom. And those bricks on the bottom went to the brick kitchen. Yep, they had a brick kitchen. So what they would do in the brick kitchen, they would take those bricks and they would weigh them. Each one of those bricks, the particular red ones, weighed about 4 pounds apiece. So then what they would do is they'd stick them in a pot on a stove full of water. And they'd leave them in there for about 24 hours, and then they'd weigh each one of those bricks again. Because believe it or not, bricks are porous. And that's one of the reasons why they can bind to the mortar. And so then after about 24 hours, they would turn on the stove and boil out all the water. And then they would stick them in a pan and put them in the oven. So make sure that all the moisture's out of that. And then they would lift them up, each one of them, and they would drop it about a little more than about 3 feet. And if it broke, it was not a good brick. So those are all part of the quality controls from the brick kitchen. So the rest of the bricks, if they were ready to go, they would take them and put cardboard over the top of them, put a steel bind around that to hold it in place. This kept the bricks dirt-free and dust-free. And on this cardboard was the name of the brick company, the type of brick it was, the lot number, and a whole bunch of other information. Then trucks would come, tow motors would come, and lift them up onto the trucks, and away they go. And that supplied brick for many of the homes, many of the businesses, many of the churches, including the church that we grew up in. And it also included the hospital that my brother, my sister, and I were all born in. So his brick went to a lot of different places. Well, you're probably wondering, what the heck does this have to do with who am I, who are you, who are we? What exactly is the point of all that nice story and all that other stuff? I'm going through pages right now. Well, bricks are cost effective, they're hard, they're stable, and they're absorbent. They keep buildings cooler in the summer and warmer in the cold months. The Empire State Building in New York City was the tallest building in the world for about 41 years since it was built in 1931. It is 1,250 feet tall, has 102 stories. 3,000 workers completed the building's construction in record time, 1 year and 45 days, including Saturdays and Sundays. The Empire State Building, along with other materials, used 10 million bricks. In 1945, a B-25 bomber on its way to Newark Airport, New Jersey, crashed into the 79th floor of the Empire State Building with very little damage. The Empire State Building is designed as a lightning rod for the surrounding area. It is struck by lightning about 100 times a year. Like I said, that's a really nice story, but what does it have to do with who are you, who am I, and who are we? What do bricks have to do with you, me, and we the people? We are bricks. It's time to get our unabridged dictionary out and look up figures of speech. A figure of speech, or as I sometimes call them, FOSS, F-O-S, is a legitimate and grammatical usage of words that are truer to truth than a literal statement of fact. If the ground is dry, that's an example of a literal statement. But if we were to read or say that the ground is thirsty, that is a figure of speech. It paints a visual image that it's not rained for a long, long time. So much so it would seem that even the ground has cracked lips. Its throat is dry, and it is shriveling up. It's dehydrated for lack of moisture. The ancient and highly logical Greeks cataloged as many as 225 different figures of speech. 212 of these are used in the Bible, with sometimes as many as 40 under one figure. 40 varieties under one figure. Remember figures of speech in the Bible. It will come up in future episodes. Doctoral candidates for their PhD probably at best know 40 figures of speech. Maybe you and I know a couple of them. And if not what they were, their meaning, how they're used. One is a simile, and the other is a metaphor. An example of a simile is usually seen with the word like. He is like a brick, or she is like a brick. A metaphor is set apart by the word is. He is as an eagle. She is as an eagle. Both of these figures of speech emphasize and magnify the literal characteristics of speech. We have seen before, in times of war, the law is silent is a metaphor. So are the law of emergency, legal fiction, and government de facto, which suspends and makes inactive government de jure. What is literal is we have not returned to ordinary occasions, and public safety does not require these things to continue anymore. You are a brick, I am a brick, we are bricks. This is a figure of speech called a metaphor. We are of the red-blooded earth. We are fired in the furnace of experience and adversity and through the storms of life with fierce thunder and terrible lightning. We are tested strong. We are stable, efficient, cost-effective, abundant, similar, and yet each unique. We are industrious. We are patient. We are absorbent, able to keep cool heads and keep the heat of passion and bind to one another. We believe in the future. We are wise in knowing we are stronger together than separate. We are beautiful. We build from the ground up. Each of us is equally important and necessary to the building that we are building together. The mortar that binds us together is our Constitution. This we have authored and ordained to serve us and bound it to us, we the people. And above all these things, we are each endowed with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Where have we heard these words before? We need to write these upon our tongues and rehearse them in our myriad souls. We need to edify and build ourselves up. We need to remove the whitewash concealing who we are. We need to reveal our inherent strength and natural beauty. To this day, red bricks are most popular in color. The name Adam means red earth. We are all descendants of the first man and woman, Adam and Eve. We have common blood. We are all red bricks. We need to edify, build each other and ourselves up. We need to reset our republic. In closing, I want to share a couple of really unique pictures which illustrate our brickness, figuratively speaking. Brick sculpture is an ancient art. The following is an example of a current sculptor right here in the United States of America. These are entirely made out of brick and mortar. The sculpture is Brad Spencer of Reidsville, North Carolina. And here's the first one. See all the people climbing this wall? The name of this piece is called Life is an Open Book. It can be seen in downtown Charlotte, North Carolina. Our lives should be like an open book. How about us, we the people, being depicted as eagles? Eagles, brick and mortar. Here's another one by the same sculptor. You see this? Raised eagle. It's all done with mortar and brick. Red brick, by the way. The eagle can be seen at East Florence High School in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. For more information on this sculpture, you can just look up www.bradspencersculptor.com. You'll see these in the show notes. Next time, we will see in episode 9 that we are all each an apple of gold. Have a wonderful day.